your holiday spirit by obsessing over spinning coaching carousels, reliving past Big 12 title game heartache, or just complaining about the BCS? Well, we're here to help. From the Dodge Sports Desk, I'm Mike Sherman, and this is the Press Row. My guest, columnist John Rohde, who studied the coaching carousel and sees the possibility of a leachless Lubbock in the Big 12's future. Columnist Jenny Carlson, who will tell you whether to worry about the similarities between the Saturday's Big 12 title game and the collapse of '03. And then columnist Barry Trammell, who has a message for anyone angry about the BCS tiebreaker. Cry me a Red River. Barry, let's start with you. What's the carryover from this BCS tiebreaker flap involving OU and OSU, and what impact could it have on the coming elections in the BCS and the Heisman?
Well, I think what we're going to see is I think a lot of the controversy is going to go away after Saturday. If Oklahoma just goes and wins like everybody thinks they will, I think you'll see a lot of voters jump back to OU from Texas. I don't think you'll see anybody jump from OU to Texas. I think the Sooners, if they win, they'll be in the national title game. I do think, and I think Jenny's right about this, I think there could be some people who vote Colt McCoy for the Heisman as a consolation vote. I mean, not a sympathy vote, but, let's throw Texas a bone. I think you could make cases for both players. So I think the BCS controversy is about to come to an end. The Heisman factor, I think, still plays out.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've talked to some voters about what they're going to do, and a lot of voters are waiting. I don't know about our voters here in the state, but a lot of voters are waiting to put that final vote in until after the games on Saturday. I think there's still a lot to be seen out there. And I haven't got the sense from anybody just yet that there's an overwhelming turn towards Colt McCoy. A lot of people have said, hey, if I had to vote now, I'd vote for Sam Bradford. And they know, obviously, what's going on with the BCS situation. So I don't know how much of a factor it's going to be, but it is a possibility. Texas gets left out and people say, hey, maybe I would have voted Colt McCoy third before. Maybe I'll vote him second now. We'll have to wait and see. But I think there is a possibility that there could be some people that give Colt McCoy a little bit of a boost because of the whole BCS mess. And you'd hate for it to be seen as a consolation prize because Colt McCoy is a very worthy candidate. He's had a great year, and we'll just have to see how it all plays out.
When it comes to the team thing, you're right, Barry. I think they will go with OU if they win. But now you remember all their votes are public. We don't know how they behaved up until this point, but now their name is going to be next to their vote. And if it's out of whack, they'd have some explaining to do. As far as the Heisman goes, when everybody thought Texas was going to go, that gave Colt McCoy one more chance to strut his stuff. Now Sam Bradford gets that chance. Now if he's just Sam Bradford, I think he'll be fine. But if something goes awry and he gets picked 2 or 3 times, maybe Colt McCoy does move up.
Speaking of style points, though, is there any chance that OU has to continue to compile style points in the Big 12 championship game? Is it important how they win?
I don't think so, as long as it's not 28-27. I guess it's possible that if OU won the Big 12 title with a really tight, tough game, that some people might say, hey, I think Texas is the better team. I don't think that will happen. I think at the end of the day, most people don't like to see non-conference champions in the BCS title game. We saw that with after Nebraska and Oklahoma made it in the early part of this decade. We saw Michigan get knocked out of that in 2006. They jumped Florida over Michigan. So I think it's almost for sure that Oklahoma, with a victory, will make the BCS title game.
That would circumvent the coaches poll if the coaches didn't go in line, and they don't like that. Grant Taft doesn't like it. The Coaches Association doesn't like it. They're obligated to vote the winner of the BCS game, the national title game, number 1. Now, they didn't after the LSU-OU thing, and USC got 3 votes, I think, and there was an uproar about that. They'll like Barry's right. They'll be in line. The coaches will if OU wins.
Does this OU-Texas BCS tiebreaker flap become, as Barry wrote about in Thursday or Wednesday's paper, another brick in the OU-Texas wall? Is this the defining thing that divides OU and Texas fans for this generation?
I think it's going to be a factor. How could it not be? I think you've got airplanes flying around stadiums. You've got Mac Brown on the phone during the Bedlam game. I think those sorts of things just add more fuel to an already hot rivalry. This thing could have been a non-factor this year, and you'd still have a rivalry that was really bubbling. I just think that there's all sorts of good, juicy subplots now that fall into this thing, and I don't know about defining it for a generation, but it's certainly going to be big, and it's going to be big for a long time in a lot of people's eyes.
That would be this year, this current generation. the spying incident is that generation. I'm with you, Mike. I think each person gets a little bit of taste, like Barry pointed out. Each decade just about gets a taste of the Red River rivalry.
Expect to see a lot of 45-35 signs at the state fair next October.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the coaching carousel. And John, you've looked at it, you've talked about it. Is this finally the year that Mike Leach leaves Lubbock?
Yeah, I think he hit the high water mark this year. He's 11-1. He danced with the big boys. It doesn't get much better than that, tying with OU and Texas, except beating them. Washington's obviously interested. He might get a second trip up there. Auburn's interested. Maybe that's why they pushed Tuberville out. But if I'm Leach, I'm going to Puget Sound. I mean, it may be in worse shape than Auburn, but the ocean's a lot closer. And insert your pirate punchline here, but it is tailor-made for Leach up there at UW. Back in the Pac-10, which is known for passing, those kind of things, he can strut his stuff there.
Well, and you can win, I think, pretty quickly at Washington. Auburn, the road's a little bit tougher, but the Pac-10, I mean, obviously USC's there, and they're going to be tough for a lot of years to come. But we've seen the Pac-10 slide a little bit, and this year especially. I don't know if you can go and win, 8 games right away necessarily, but I think the road to winning in the Pac-10 is a lot easier than it would be at Auburn. And even if you go up there and have a 500 season next year, they're going to be going crazy. They're going to be in love with you. The pressure is not on immediately to have a great season, whereas I think at Auburn, you got to go and you got to win right away.
The one thing, though, is UW has some stadium issues. They've got some budget issues. In the SEC, nobody except maybe Vanderbilt has any budget issues. They just go print more money if they need more. So that's the only consideration. I'm with you. I'd rather live in Seattle. I'd rather coach at Washington. It's easier to win. On the other hand, there's some hurdles and some roadblocks at the University of Washington that might make Mike Leach think that Auburn's the better place.
Style of play fit better in the Pac-10 than it does in the SEC?
Well, I mean, Auburn's star for an offense has been for 3.5 years, maybe longer. So they'd love him there. I think he's a better fit on the West Coast.
Now, who goes to Lubbock?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Maybe Kevin Wilson. I know we saw Tim Beckman leave for Toledo. He's left OSU. I think Kevin Wilson is high on the mark or high on the list to be a guy that takes a head coaching job somewhere. He's obviously got a high-powered offense like they now are expecting in Lubbock. He knows what to do with personnel like they have. He might be a fit to go to Lubbock. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what does happen with that job.
Tech's got a tough decision to make, and that is, do you hire somebody who keeps the Leach offense and goes along that track, which really narrows your gene pool because there's not that many guys that run it or that know how to run it. Somebody like Kevin Wilson or a lot of other guys would do things. I mean, they'd still spread the field a lot, but they wouldn't be running the Mike Leach offense. Tech has to make the decision. Do we switch offenses as well as head coaches?
How about this one? How about Art Briles? Now, I don't think a Big 12 school coach has gone from school. Heck, I don't even know if a Big 8 guy went from head coach to head coach within the same conference. Briles would be on there. Maybe Todd Graham. Maybe Tulsa's Todd Graham could be a candidate for Tech.
Now, the other thing is, nobody runs what Leach does. I mean, like nobody else does, the 8 or 11 plays, depending on what Bob Stoops is calling it. But there are people who run variations of it. And is that the thing in Lubbock? Do they have to have somebody that runs that precise offense?
I think they have to come pretty close to it because it's so become their identity. And that high scoring and that quarterback machine, I would think it would be a tough sell to go in there and start running something different. It'd be like coming into Oklahoma. It's one thing to go into Oklahoma in 1999 like Bob Stoops did, and coming with a brand new offense. But if somebody came into Norman in 1985 or 1986 or 1976 and said, enough of this wishbone, we're going to try something else, that's a very tough sell. I think it's a tough sell in Lubbock right now after all the success they've had to say, we're going to go down a different road.
Okay. Tim Beckman's in Toledo as we speak, being announced as the new coach of Toledo. Who's next on the Mike Gundy coaching tree that's sprouting up right now? Who's next to lead the staff?
I say Looper to New Mexico, and I think they've already started that process. So Curtis Looper and everybody just assumed it would be DeForest, but I hear they're interested in Looper.
That does a couple interesting things. Mississippi State, just lost one of the few black head coaches left in college football. Curtis Looper is African American. New Mexico says, hey, we're doing what we're supposed to do, but why is he an attractive candidate beyond that?
Well, he's got an engaging personality. Everybody likes him. I think he had obviously, if he's a candidate in New Mexico, he was there. They liked him. He's got friends there. So I think he's a solid candidate.
Yeah.
And what you've seen, we've seen it in the NFL. We've seen it some in college. But we're seeing more coaches, assistant coaches, who aren't necessarily coordinators, become head coaches. And that's a recent phenomenon, but at least in the NFL, it's worked famously when you look at people like Harbaugh and Jim Zorn and some others. So
Mike Smith in Jacksonville.
Mike Smith in Atlanta.
Atlanta.
So good for Curtis Looper if he gets that job. And Power, tip your cap to Gundy because he has started a little coaching tree and. He brought in Fedora and got Fedora a head coaching job. Now he's brought in Beckman, got Beckman a head coaching job. So good things happening in Stillwater.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Trooper Taylor get some looks too. He's got that energetic, engaging personality, a little bit more high energy than Curtis Looper, but same sort of guy. He's been at Tennessee, now at OSU.
How good's his timing getting out of Tennessee?
Yeah.
Talk about one step ahead of the posse. That was a smart move getting to Stillwater.
And don't these hires in some ways say a lot about just the dominance and importance of recruiting? Because you're not a coordinator, but you obviously had to do something. Curtis Looper is well liked, and so that really puts Trooper Taylor in a possible future head coaching job. Let's switch to the Big 12 title game. And Jenny, doesn't the fact that our Big 12 discussions didn't lead this show, doesn't that say something about how people are maybe overlooking this game? OU's a 16.5-point favorite. Missouri's not coming in on anything resembling a hot streak. They lost last week to Kansas. Any chance that OU overlooks the Missouri Tigers Saturday?
I don't know if they necessarily overlook them, but I also don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that Missouri wins this game. I think it's a small chance. I think it's a minuscule 1-2% type of chance. But in 2003, nobody was thinking that K-State goes in and beats Oklahoma. Nobody. I mean, that was beyond the realm of possibility. And they didn't just beat them; they trounced them in that game. So the whole idea that it's an impossibility that Missouri wins. I'm not picking Missouri to win, but Oklahoma's got questions. Sam Bradford's thumb, how does it hold up? Does that change anything for the Oklahoma offense? You've got a new guy starting at linebacker. Mike Balogun played well in a reserve role against OSU, but how does he do as the full-time guy? So I do think there are some questions and some things that you can't really account for until they get in the game. Still think Oklahoma's the superior team, but there's definitely a possibility, even though it's slim, that Missouri wins on Saturday.
Well, the fact that it happened before, I know it's a different team, leads you to believe that they're on the watch, on the lookout now. Plus, they're getting disrespected all week long.
Sure.
It's not like they've been welcomed with open arms to this game in the first place. So, Barry, I think their focus is right where it needs to be. You assume that.
Yeah, to me, this is not shades of 2003, not because of the Sooners, but because of the Missouri Tigers. Kansas State in 2003 was a little bit of a possum. They lost to Marshall in September. But from October 1st on in 2003, Kansas State was a load. They went 6-2 in the league and lost 4-point games at Texas and at OSU, both good teams that year. They were a very good team. OU ran into a buzzsaw, didn't play very well. This Missouri team is in tatters. I talked to people in St. Louis and Kansas City this week, and they both say there's no excitement for this game. There's no confidence on the Missouri side. What should be a home field advantage at Arrowhead for Missouri won't be, just because people just not excited about it. Kansas just beat Missouri, and Kansas is an inferior team to Missouri. If you watch the talent levels, not close this year. Missouri's better, yet Kansas just outgutted them. I just don't see any way Missouri can win this game.
John, you said something interesting. Reminds me of 03,
right.
04, and it is this BCS party that the Sooners are, about ready to go into, and then everybody's looking at them saying, "What are you doing here?" In 03, there were serious questions about whether the Sooners belonged in the Sugar Bowl, having lost the conference championship game. In 04, it was Auburn, USC, and the Sooners, and okay, Maybe it should have been Auburn, though. And now it's the same thing. You know, over and over again, OU's looked at the third wheel at the party. Any impact on the Sooners as they go forward? Because the last two times they said it had an impact, and it really didn't, at least in the final outcome.
Well, they had the computers to bail them out. But, you know, I'm surrendering on how people are voting. I thought the first Tuesday every 4 years in November was confusing. I'm questioning the people's right to vote at this point, for crying out loud. Some of the stuff they're voting for and the manner in which they voted just is disturbing.
Well, let's get back to football, John. Let's talk about football.
Okay.
The football voting. Enough about your presidential politics.
Can the Sooners use this us against the world mentality that they really tried to cultivate in past bowl games and make it work for them? Because, by the way, they haven't done that well on the national stage lately.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's overrated. I mean, I think.
Well, you thought they learned their lesson after Boise State, but West Virginia had
Right.
to be up.
Exactly right.
Right.
Here's the deal. You got to block people on the perimeter, and you got to complete passes and protect your quarterback, and that's how you win ball games. And I don't think getting fired up about what somebody on ESPN says about you has much to do with it. So the Sooners, I think they're going to take care of Missouri. When they go on to Miami, you can play with a chip on your shoulder if you want to, but it's not going to help you. What you need to play with a stout shoulder pad on your shoulder and block the guy trying to take Sam Bradford's head off. That's the best thing that could happen to him.
Well, and I think the interesting thing about the pundits and all the talk out there, if this had gone the other way, if Texas was playing on Saturday, if the human polls had both flipped enough to put them in that championship game, there'd still be uproar. There'd still be outcry. People would be saying, hey, wait a second, Mac Brown politicking like Barack Obama has won over the voters. Is that right? Whether it's OU in or Texas in, I still think the good people at ESPN, CBS, ABC, they'd all still have something that they'd be crying about. So yeah, I agree with Barry. If that's what it's gonna take to get you fired up, maybe you better check yourself, because there's a lot of guys that are coming at you trying to give you a bigger headache than that.
Final question: who will be coming at them? Florida or Alabama? Jenny first.
I go with Florida. I like their offense too much right now to pick against them. I think it's going to be a good game, but I do like Florida.
John?
Those who coach speak like Alabama, just because they're big and strong and don't mess around, straightforward. They just shove you until you can't get up again.
Barry?
I picked Alabama in the paper today. I think I'm on an island. I think everybody took Florida, but I like Alabama because they play defense and they run the ball, and they got a coach that I can't stand, but is big in big games. And Nick Saban, he knows what he's doing. Not that Urban Meyer is a slouch, but and also I think this 10-point favorite situation for Florida.
It's crazy.
That is kooky.
No Percy Harvin.
Hey, let me tell you what. Alabama will hit you in the mouth. John's right. They will line up and pop you. So I'm taking Bama.
Thanks, folks. That's all for the Press Row. Listen, stay with the news and analysis from the best coverage team daily by picking up a copy of the New Look Oklahoman and living on the most informative and trusted website in the state at newsok.com.
Let's see it.